reason?
Because he's recycling his old car.
For cash.
Right. Less in the landfill and new life for the parts.
That's responsible.
If you've got an old car to get rid of, call Pick and Pull at 800-442-JUNK.
Get cash for your car at Pick and Pull, your local car and truck recycler for over 30 years.
Call 800-442-5865 for a top dollar quote and a quick tow.
Recycle your junk car for cash at Pick and Pull. Call 800-442-JUNK.
800-442-5865.
Hear the voices of the streets of West Oakland, California come alive on The Lower Bottoms, a full-cast scripted podcast. You'll hear a darkly comic tale about the people of this quickly gentrifying neighborhood.
I want answers. I want to know why my sister is lying in a bed comatose.
Let me show you. This Friday, the old 16th Street train station.
Why there? Because it's where you're going to be reborn.
Listen to The Lower Bottoms on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.
This report is sponsored by Safeguard Soap and Sanitizers. As we all find a new normal, don't just wash your hands, safeguard them. Safeguard hand wash and sanitizers help rid the bacteria, and it smells amazing. Now, buy one, get one free at Walmart and walmart.com with online offer.
If you like, because Serenity can help. We're the largest insurance company in the U.S., specializing in SR22 auto insurance and focused on serving the needs of customers classified by the state as high-risk drivers. We help people get back on their feet by providing easy-to-get, low-cost SR22 insurance that anyone can afford. If you need SR22 auto insurance, or if you have it now and are paying too much, you need to call us today for your free quote at 800-279-7816. Our specialists are standing by waiting for your call. We understand people make mistakes, and we're here to help by making SR22 insurance easy to get and affordable for everyone. The call and quote are free. Call us now at 800-279-7816. That's 800-279-7816.
Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton with Big C. Coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C. And them good old boys down south, I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond in London, England, as well as Paris, France, of course. You good old boys in Canada and Africa, the Big C tribe. But there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south, in the land of the free and the home of the brave, on a beautiful July the 22nd, 2021. Grande Deportes, bonjour, Big C, de Vici. As I always say, how's it going for you good old boys down south? Big C Sports will be changing its format coming up soon for the 2021 kickoff to the NFL football season. I want to say for everybody out there, no matter what you're doing in life, make sure you always rise and shine. And sometimes when you fly, you got to fly alone, like I always tell my kids and everyone that follows that advice. I want to say today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you, as well as a fleet of Cadillac cars also all around the world. Just say Google or Alexa play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear welcome to the show. I know sometime I introduce Big C as the Mystic, but we'll also have some more guests calling in for the 2021 Big C Sports Podcast. Some NFL football players and NBA football players will be also joining the Big C Sports Podcast. I also want to say you can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Apple TV, Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. You better have a smart TV. Oh, you'll be sitting there looking at a still picture. Man, I love pausing. Pausing is good because pausing is like manifesting, and when you manifest good. But what I would never pause on is our Veterans Crisis Hotline. They really are experienced helping veterans and their loved ones get help, and I really do appreciate the way things have grown with Big C Sports. I remember sitting at an NBA basketball game. It was a basketball pre-op. The great Marcus Spears from ESPN, he was sitting there at the table with a couple of other people in media, and we were just talking about some of the things that are happening in sports, and really we were all eating a lot of food. It could have been the Big C Burger. It's a tasty burger, and it comes with exotic meats, but it was not the Big C Burger. It was just a lot of food all over the place. So I really appreciate all the advice that I've gotten from people that work in media over the years. But if you know anyone going through a crisis, just pick up the phone and call 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255, or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. If you're online, simply go to veteranscrisisline.net. That's veteranscrisisline.net, and you can definitely get some help for our veterans and their loved ones is always a good thing. Also, very happy to be affiliated with Valley Homes Weekly TV on Dish TV, DirecTV, AT&T Uverse, TV 53, home of the first place San Francisco Giants, and the Dodgers don't like the way they was pouring some sugar on them last night, and the home run king as well as the Say Hey Kid. And you reach out to him, just tell him Big C sent you. Our goal is simple: recruit 10,000 real estate agents and brokers all over this great country to help put people back to work, just like McDonald's does it, car dealerships do it, sports teams are doing it, watch TV, and real estate work for you. 800-772-8624. If you're looking for opportunities in real estate, go to bigcsports.pacwm.com. Most of our loans are underwritten by Rocket Mortgage, the #1 lender in the country on the wholesale side. When you need a loan, don't be sure, be Rocket Sure. It's all fair in Leavenworth. My greatest commercial that I love, there's a young girl, she's on TV, and she answered the phone, and she said, "Do you need a loan? Daddy, it's for you." It's all fair in Leavenworth. I love when my kids growing up, they used to answer the phone, say, "Daddy, it's for you." So it's all fair in Leavenworth. Sometimes you see it in yourself and other people. But I also want to say, all around the world, I really want to say thank you to Xfinity Comcast TV and Comcast Spotlight for presenting Big C Sports to the universe. Just like in Genesis 1:3, God said, "Let there be light." Open your cell phones and say it. Play Big C Sports Podcast. You will see all of our apps pop up from all over the world. In fact, there's about 14 apps now that have popped up all over the world, and I really do appreciate the way things have grown with Big C Sports. I also want to give a shout out to my cousin for covering the Olympics over in Japan, and I just appreciate your ascension in the world of sports. And I know having you on the show a couple of years ago, calling in from the NFL Network, really proud to see you rise and shine. Sometimes you're going to fly alone, but you keep flying. Don't worry about who jumps off the plane unless they have a parachute. But I really wish you the best in your coverage of the Olympics. I want to just say today's show is also sponsored by Budweiser Zero, 100% on your game, but 0% alcohol. Like, how fun is that to have 0% alcohol? If you taste it, you realize how good it tastes. 100% on your game, 0% alcohol. It goes great with the Big C Burger. It is a tasty burger, and it comes with exotic meats. It's all fair in Leavenworth. Man, I'm telling you, I was listening to some James Brown this morning. I feel good. I do feel good. And I think about something that my beautiful mom always says: you got to rise and shine. Always rise and shine. Sometimes there are people who want to rise and shine with you, and others don't. That's all fair in Leavenworth. Always wish everybody nothing but the best. We all have a different path to take in this life. But I do want to say something. I was talking to a business partner of mine about $6 billion and manifesting this $6 billion. And we talked about the great Jeff Bezos and how Jeff Bezos, supposedly the wealthiest man in the world. And I think his net worth is like $200 billion. And so there's some news that came out. He can go to any sporting event that he wants to with that kind of money. I mean, you could buy a couple of sports teams with $200 billion, but he's part of what's going on with Amazon. But I do appreciate when you think about what Mr. Bezos did, and he didn't have to do it. It made me wonder, when you give someone a Christmas card or a birthday card or a happy anniversary card, do you always take the time to put that information into the media? Is it really necessary that the whole world knows that if you need a loan, don't call Rocket Mortgage, just call Van Jones. If someone give you $100 million, just call Van Jones, the new lender and sponsor of the Big C Sports Show and every other sports show that knows you got $100 million. Thanks a lot, Uncle Bezos. But when you think about it, it's really great that he's taken that philanthropic way of adding to the life of other people. And I know he did a good job, Van Jones, over the years of reaching out. Also, food chef Jose Andres. And when it comes to what they do with the money, they do whatever they want to do with the money. And if you have $200 billion, it's hard to even count the $200 billion. I don't even know if my calculator will add up to $200 billion. But Van Jones, his calculator only has to add up to $100 million. And I don't know what he's going to do with that money, but what I know of Van Jones, he's been an advocate of civil rights and helping people do whatever they had to do to have more liberty and justice for all. And I do appreciate that, because if you think about it, everything that we do in life, we all need somebody to hold our hands. And I remember being a young boy, and how getting into school, someone that held my hand every single day and told me it's time to rise and shine, is my mother did that. And I think about how often it was told. It was told every day. It wasn't told sometimes. It wasn't told every other day. It wasn't told every other week. It was every day. And when someone tells you something every day, you tend to believe it. So whatever Jeff Bezos, his mind is behind that, I mean, there's a lot of billionaires in this country, but I'm sure with Van Jones and also food chef Jose Andres, he likes to feed a lot of people. There's going to be a lot more people that are reaching out to them, maybe for some more philanthropic donations. But if Bezos can give $100 million to each one of those gentlemen, I'm sure there's a lot more people that he's helped and industries that he's also going to reach out and put his time and energy into. There's so much talk about those who have helped those who have not. And I just appreciate the fact that he did it. I don't know why it's necessary to always come out and put that over the media, but people do what they want to do. And I wish that they do their very best with it. And I hope that as more young people reach out and find out what's going on in their own lives, you're going to find people who are there for you in your life and those who are not. And what Bezos did was make a lot of opportunities come true, you know, for people that are going to do good things with that money. And I know that Van Jones will. He's been that kind of a person as far as I've known when he's been on CNN and pontificating oftentimes with the media pundits, whether it's the presidential elections, and oftentimes on CNN, they've been adding some sports figures, you know, to what they've been doing as well. So I know he's going to do a great job of that, and everybody has their own moment to shine, and hope that they're going to find some type of medium to reach out and help people. And that's my whole hope. Even with Big C Sports, there's a monumental growth that's happening right now, and some things that you say, well, should I talk about them, or do I wait for them to happen? I mean, there's a biblical term that says you speak things that be not as though they were. And so it's time to just rise and shine and speak those things into existence, and sometimes those things show up before you even speak them. And that's a weird thing, talking about manifestations and how the universe was created and how people go about doing a sports show. I remember just my foray into sports. It started as a young boy, and my mother would always have professional football players that would come stay at my mom's house. They would bring food, they would cook food, they would help paint the house, and she never had to do anything because they made sure that she didn't have to go into her own pocket and reach out to them. So when people say, well, how does something get started that I'm going to talk about on this show today? You got to look around your life and realize there's always someone who lit that spark, like in Genesis 1:3. God said, let there be light. And then light appeared, and God saw that it was good. So no matter who you are in life and what you're going to do in your life, you got to find out who's on your team and make sure that you help those who reach out and ask for help. Sometimes you're the one needing help. Sometimes you're the one giving that help. So I really appreciate that. Not everybody has that same thing. But going back to my mother, she always exposed me and my brothers and sisters to opportunities so that we could rise and shine, so that we could grow our own sphere of influence. And as a beautiful African-American woman, sometimes people may not realize that whatever she was able to do, she had to do it kind of going against the current. And having brothers growing up that we all did the best we could to help each other, and a father, you know, that did the best he could to help us do a lot of things that we wanted to do in life. I look at how I got into the punt, pass, and kick role. That's because my mother signed me up. And I think I want to say I was about 8 years old, maybe even 10, somewhere in there. And then going from there, having that chance to just rise and shine with that, I was able to find a way to find my own way in life. And from that, being a young boy, seeing professional football players staying the night at my mom's house, and then going off to elementary school. Of course, you play football, basketball, and baseball. We were into martial arts. We were into fishing. But it was something about the NFL football players that I saw that came to my mother's home and painted the house. And just watching these guys with the big muscles, realizing, you know, I want to look like that someday. Mind, I'm just a young boy. And I had a cousin that played professional football. And at the same time, you know, he would bring those people in. So as a young boy, you don't know what's going on in your environment. All you know is people that bring good seed and good images around. And so based on that, getting involved in the world of sports, whether it's football, basketball, or baseball, track and field, punt, pass, and kick, I think about the Little League baseball and the punt, pass, and kick. Well, my mother was a part of all of that. And oftentimes, even would coach the Little League baseball team, when our head coach couldn't make it. For whatever reason, he would just call and say, I'm not going to be able to make it today, or not going to be able to make it this week. And so she took on, she didn't panic. She didn't say, oh my God, what am I going to do? She just did the best she could and asked other people about the game, but she's always paid attention to the game, and I always thank Mom for that. But I'll never forget this. As a young African-American woman, and trying to open up the door of opportunity for herself and her children, there were people that did not want to hear it. They didn't want to hear from a young black woman, and most of them were Caucasian. I've had the benefit of knowing people good and bad in my life, black and white, but I know that there were times that people would tell their parents they don't want to listen to a black woman, and they would actually bring that to my mother's attention. It was brought to my mother's attention oftentimes by the head coach, who was a white man. And I know his first name, if I recall, it was Marty. And he told my mother some of the things that some of these other parents, they didn't want their kids to be coached by a black woman. Well, Marty told them that they could just quit. Because if they didn't want to listen to her, then they could always quit. And so he gave her her full support. And with the full support that she had, she was able to go on and not only coach our team, but she helped us win the league championship. I think that's important. As a black woman, the only black woman, I don't know if in the history of the sports league, but the only black woman that I ever saw coaching Little League Baseball, and to be around people who didn't want her to compete, not because she didn't know what she was doing, they just didn't want to listen to someone who was black. Now again, I grew up back in the days of Jim Crow, but this is right around, when I was a young boy. I went about 11 or 12 years old. But I'll never forget that, because it's like everything else in life. My mother could have quit. She could have said, you know what? It's tough out here, and I just want to kind of hide my talents, and I don't want anyone to judge me. Maybe I'm doing wrong. If you do something wrong, you apologize, but you got to bring that to someone's attention. People don't have to see eye to eye, but you should not be at odds. But some people like being at odds, so let them go be at odds. That's their choice. But I would say what I learned from my mother growing up is what every baseball player learns when you're at the batter's box. And you don't know if you're going to get a hit or not, but when you're at the batter's box, you got to swing the bat. You got to hit deep. You got to swing the bat. And when you're swinging that bat, not everybody's going to swing the bat with you. There's sometimes you're going to strike out. Good pitch. Strike three. Struck him out. We see that too, and the crowd goes nuts when they strike three, struck him out. I think the Dodgers saw a lot of that last night when the San Francisco Giants were down there to Bears Ravine doing their thing and winning that game at the end of the game, where they could have just gone and gone into the tank, but the Giants hung on and won. But back to my beautiful mother, who taught me and my brothers and sisters that no matter what goes on in life, you rise and shine. I remember being up to bat as a baseball player and not knowing if I could get a hit. I had a brother, named Todd that's since gone on, but he was one of the best baseball players I ever knew. He could hit a home run just by looking at the ball at times. The pitch, hit deep, right field, back to the wall, home run! And that's what I heard a lot when my brother Todd was up to bat, because he was always doing the best he could to be great at everything he did. Learned a lot from him about reading. Oftentimes when I do my show, I think I channel my brother Todd, because oftentimes he had a lot of fire and brimstone. But he wasn't a liar. There's a lot of people that would lie right to your face, and they know it. But Todd wasn't that way. There were people that would steal from him. There were people that he would help them with their children. And at the end of the day, they'd rob from him anyway. They'd just rob him, and he always knew who did it. But he wouldn't say anything to him. And that's what I learned about him. You rise and shine no matter what. And I remember something that he told me. And I have a nickname that my family calls me that I don't tell many people, because it's a kind of a family. It's a family thing, very personal to me. But I'll never forget that he would call me that name, and I would listen to that name, and he wrote me a letter that I still have to this day. I must have been right around college and having some things go on in my life, and my brother Todd, he made sure that I got through it, because that's what brothers do. You lean on each other. I mean, good brothers do that. Other guys don't. They got their own agenda. But I'll never forget that, because there were times when he needed help, and he would call me and I'd help him. I didn't make that announcement to the whole world, but that's what good brothers do, and I'll never forget that from Todd. So oftentimes when I do the show, and I speak with a lot of passion, because Todd did that. And to me, it's paying homage to Todd and how he always taught me that, to be Just be honest with people. People may not like it. If you hurt someone's feelings, then people should have the balls to talk about it as opposed to just trying to talk about you behind your back, and that's okay too. But the thing with baseball, and my mother taught it, and Taka hit a baseball over the fence just by looking at it, and I always remember how he always would rise and shine. As a big kid, sometimes, was uncomfortable with his size. He was a bigger young boy than a lot of kids. But he has a heart of gold, and I still think about him every time I do the Big C Sports podcast. And I always will. And he told me something about my children when they were born. He said they got to always go forward. You always go forward. And he wrote me a letter one time, and he made fun of me. I didn't have the biggest backside, the biggest derriere. And he was known to have a derriere. A lot of women say they like the derriere. But he was saved by my nickname, and he said, you got to always go forward. Don't look back, because there's nothing back there but your backside. You know what little you have of it. And I thought that was always a funny way with the way brothers pick on each other. And, there are times when people that I grew up with, you could say something, and maybe someone felt offended, and they didn't even tell you they were offended. They just had an attitude. And I even see that in my own family at times. Sometimes people don't talk anymore. People that would do whatever, and just that, the ego thing. But that's okay too. I learned a lot from Todd. It's amazing that he's not here, but some of the things that he told me, I still think about, and I pass it on to my children in everything that I do. But going back to my mother again, the Little League baseball coach, other men could have stepped up and offered to do it, but she did it on her own. She didn't ask for help. She did it. She asked some people for advice, but she didn't ask someone to help her coach. She did it on her own because she was always one to rise and shine, and I appreciate what she was able to do in rising and shining. And so from there, being able to be an all-star in Little League baseball, and then going on to high school and realizing that everything you do in life, you really are on your own. You're born alone. You die alone. You go through life. You can't choose who you're born from, but you can choose who you choose to deal with in life. And there are times when, as you realize that, and you grow up and you try to make things happen, you do the best you can, and that's what I learned a lot from Todd. So I wanted to just pay homage, to him today. And my mother and father's birthday month is in the month of July, and then coming up in the month of August, there's a lot of growth happening with the Big C Sports, and I know that a lot of people have been there on my side helping me get through. And no matter what, whether it's Big C or whether it's anybody that I've worked with over the years, there's always times when you look back and you realize no one gets there on your own. But I do realize sometimes you got to do things on your own. You just rise and shine. And if you know who you are, you just be who you are and do the best you can. So that's what I love about that. And then growing up and being in high school and realizing that at the high school level, there's football, basketball, and baseball, always been a part of that. And there are times when my brothers, we would always play sports in the backyard. And I think about how did it get here today with the things that are about to happen for Big C Sports that are something I've always dreamt of, and I really appreciate that. But you think, how did you get here? Like there's a song, Let the Days Go By. I don't know who sang it, but how did I get here? Is this my beautiful house? Is this my beautiful wife? And they sing that song, Let the Days Go By. I gotta remember who sang that song. I know some people listening already know who sang that song, but it's about how I got here. I talked about my mother introducing me to professional athletes when I was a young boy, these grown men that came by, and you notice they had a lot more discipline just based on their body type and how they looked compared to people who maybe didn't work out or lift weights as much as they could have. And so that's something I've always admired about young people that wanted to be something. They went out and made it happen. It's all fair in love and war. And then from playing sports in high school, football, basketball, baseball, track and field, being able to be a part of that, I've always admired some of when I was a freshman, noticing some of the varsity football players. We had guys that went on to play football at Cal Berkeley, other guys that went on to Nevada, other guys that went on to USC, some went to Fresno State, others went to Utah. Met guys that went on to University of Washington, UCLA, Notre Dame, Arizona State. A lot of good athletes that I've grown up around, Sacramento State, and even at the time, St. Mary's College over in the Bay Area, University of Santa Clara, Stanford University. So growing up around athletes that I was able to see compete at a high level, it put a lot of determination inside of me. And I love that fact that I have that determination. Not everybody has that, but it means that when you do something, you just rise and shine. So from high school, having the chance to go on and play college football, and did the best I could with college football. And from college football, I saw a lot of athletes, unfortunately, they did not go pro. But they spent a lot of time lifting weights, a lot of time running the 40, running the stadiums, and didn't make it to the promised land where they played in the NFL. And I've always admired guys that push through no matter what. You just got to always believe in yourself no matter what. So when I got to college, I studied media. I was the only African-American media at my university. A man that gave me the chance was a black man by the name of Bill Seamster. And he taught media in college, and he gave me a chance to work there and learn the ropes of media and how to do media. And I was the only black man there doing it. I also remember when I was at media, there would be people that would come on campus. It was my job to set up the sound stage. And setting up the sound stage, I had to do it on my own. He didn't care if it was raining. He didn't care if we didn't have snow in California, but he didn't care if it was raining, if it was sunshine or foggy or cold. All Bill said was, Charlton, make sure you get this stuff done. He didn't make excuses. He didn't believe in making excuses because he got paid based on rising and shining. Same thing my mother told me. So what does it have to do with being able to go to college and learning how to do things where you're on your own? And I tell my son this all the time, and my daughter's already figured it out. You know, a lot of people, they hate when you acknowledge your own children. I have people that even when my kids graduated from college, not one thank you, not one congratulations letter, not one here's a letter, I'm proud of you, none of that stuff. But when people get in trouble and they go into jail, then the whole family wants to get involved to see if they can help them out. And so what does I say to young black kids? They go, how come no one in your family is here to acknowledge my graduation? And my mom would always say, baby, you just tell them we love them. My mom would show up at every one that she could. And I love that about that. I love being able to tell my kids that whatever you do, sometimes you're going to be the only one. And I mean that's something that you got to understand in life. Sometimes you're going to be the only one. So my daughter went on to graduate with honors in 3.5 years from Ameda University and had 2 majors. She got a job in media. She didn't even ask for my help. She was just able to go out and do it because of her drive and her initiative. And I've always tried to be an example for the people that I love, the people in my family, to go out and be the best you can. And it doesn't mean that everyone's going to like you, but if you go out and do the best you can, then you're going to have a chance to make the most of everything that you want to be in life. And so what does that have to do with today? I remember on campus, I had a media, it was a TV, we had a TV station on campus. And I remember that it was part of my job that I had to go out and interview athletes. It's about what I'm doing today on Big C Sports. It was my job to go out and interview athletes and interview them for the campus TV station. And I did that, just like now. And I admire him, and I tell my own son, I give my son stats to give to me so he can be into that business of broadcast. I know there's a lot of time other communities help each other. And what I want to bring to other people, especially African Americans, like my mother, she always helped us. Brothers and sisters always helped each other. But sometimes there's something in the African American community too where sometimes people don't want to work together. They rather work for somebody who doesn't look like them, and that's their choice too. But I've always told my son, when you send me some stats, I'm going to pay you for it. You don't have to do things for free. You don't have to do things without pay. You send me stats and I'll pay you. I remember when I was starting at the TV station, actually the radio station, I had my daughter arrange some interviews. And I would have a football players call in to the station. And my daughter arranged those interviews. One of those players went on to play college football, but I paid her for that. She went on to help me at a event that I did with a sports event. There were coaches from as far, I think they were all west of the Mississippi River. There's about 40 colleges, Division I, Division II, and some junior college coaches that came to an event up in Nevada. My daughter came and helped me, and I paid her money because I wanted her to know you're working and earning your money. You're not just showing up to help Dad. And so I've always appreciated giving back the way people have given back to me. And I will always try to give back to young people, especially those that I love, and no matter what you got to do, you got to rise and shine. You're not going to end with everyone you start with. We're going to take what's called the Big C pause, other known as the Big C timeout. In the words of the great Arnold Schwarzenegger, I'll be back. All right, I'm back from the Big C pause, also known as the Big C timeout. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on so many apps, and I really appreciate the way things have grown with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Apple TV, Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. If you better have a smart TV, or you'll be sitting there looking at a still picture. It's all fair in love and war. I really want to say thank you to Xfinity, Comcast TV, and Comcast Spotlight for presenting Big C Sports to the universe. Just like God said in Genesis 1:3, let there be light. Open your cell phones and say, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will see all of our apps pop up from all over the world. And I really do appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. The pitch, hit deep. Right field, back to the wall, home run! Say hello to my little friend, the great Scarface, Tony Montana. It's all fair in love and war. The girls love the long ball, and men love hit it deep. It's all fair in love and war. Today's schedule for Major League Baseball: the Texas Rangers 7, actually the Detroit Tigers 7, Texas Rangers 5, and then the Atlanta Braves 5, the Philadelphia Phillies nothing. It was the Padres, and they were leading as we're doing this show, so I won't give up the score, but the Padres at the Marlins. You have the Tampa Bay Rays at the Cleveland Indians, the New York Yankees, and the Boston Red Sox. These two great franchises. There'll be some changes going on, most likely in the organization of the Yankees as we come up on the trade deadline for Major League Baseball, but that's always a great series. Chicago Cubs at the St. Louis Cardinals, the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim at the Minnesota Twins, the Oakland Athletics at the Seattle Mariners, and the San Francisco Giants. And you hear their tagline in the first part of every Big C Show's podcast. They're down at Chavez Ravine Dodger Stadium. They had a nice game last night where they were hitting deep. It's all fair in love and war, and they got the best of the Los Angeles Dodgers. I wish the very best for all the good old boys playing in the world of Major League Baseball. And they say rise and shine. They will always do their thing. There's so much that I want to just acknowledge about that, because baseball, it's like baseball, hot dogs, apple pie, and Chevrolet. There's a lot of people that love the game of baseball, especially being in Northern California. And when we have that Northern California versus Southern California rivalry, a lot of people put their heart, mind, body, and soul into that. And I really appreciate it because it's part of what we all do. As a great team and the genre that we have and watching sports, you get to see the all-star, like the power rankings for Major League Baseball. There's a lot of good old boys that are out there and trying to do their best and being the best they can, and they're called power rankings, so they get involved in that and decide on who the best teams are, and so I love that. But this goes all the way back to when my mother started me with the punt, pass, and kick in Little League Baseball and playing and being my own coach. I've had that with my mother, so I always appreciate where I came from, and hopefully if I can inspire other people along the way, then I'm always going to do that. You can always rise and shine. I know I've met so many people in the world of sports, and as I graduated college and went into media, didn't have the same openings that some of my counterparts had. I did my internship at a radio station where Rush Limbaugh was just leaving. The late Rush Limbaugh, famous talk show host with a lot of his vitriol. But I did learn some things. The great Kitty O'Neill is still there, and she opened the door back in the day, and she's still doing her thing. There's also a lady that I went to school with by the name of Christina Mendoza. Oftentimes you'll hear her voice on the front of our Big C Sports podcast. She went on media, and I think she went back to Denver and then came back to Northern California. It's all fair in love and war. But I got my start in media. I've always remembered this. When I was always active in California sports after I graduated. So I met a guy by the name of Mark Tennis, who's the owner of Cal High Sports. And through him, I met a gentleman by the name of Victor Davis. And I told him I want to get into broadcast. So I went down to Los Angeles. It was a Texas versus California All-Star football game. And I met a guy by the name of Tom Kelly. And he was a broadcaster, the late Tom Kelly broadcaster for USC football. He had an old Grizzly voice, but he had a great way of calling the game, and he would say, just have a conversation. And I remember as a spotter for him, I did a great job. And I remember actually Keyshawn Johnson, who's also doing work with the ESPN. Keyshawn Johnson, the NFL champion with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, also one of the great players that played at USC, wide receiver. I remember following Keyshawn Johnson when he played at Dorsey High School for the Dons in Southern California. I don't know if they could beat Crenshaw, but the Dorsey Dons were always loaded with talent, and he took that talent on to USC. But Keyshawn Johnson was there. I remember him standing up right before he was drafted into the NFL. But Tom Kelly, after the game, and just for you good old boys down in Texas, California won the game. It's all fair, 11 wars. But Tom Kelly turned around and said, you do a good job, my man. What do you want to do? And I said, I want to do what you do. I want to get in the broadcast. And he said, okay. That was it. I'm black. He's white. That was Saturday night down in Fulton, California. I remember I stayed at the Disneyland Hyatt Hotel. And so that was Saturday. Listen up, young people. I didn't send out resumes. I didn't have a sports agent. I mean, if you can get those things, fine. All I did was pray and ask God for what I wanted to be. So on Tuesday, I got a phone call from a guy by the name of Mike Roig, and he worked with Fran Morrison, and they were part of the best NFL broadcast team in the universe, the great John Madden and the late Pat Summerall. And all he said was, can you be in San Francisco on Thursday? It was a Thursday night preseason game. At that time, San Diego Chargers at the San Francisco 49ers. And I'll never forget that, because I got my opportunity by a man saying, you do a good job, and what do you want to be? He asked me, because you have not, because you ask not. Remember that. And sometimes you're going to fly on your own. You're born into this world on your own. You're going to die on your own. That's just the way it is. That's how God designed it. But from there, at the 49ers and Chargers game, I met Fran Morrison and Mike Roig, of course. I'd only met Mike Roig over the phone. And from there, they gave me my assignment to work as a Chiron assist. And I did a good job. And they said, hey, you do a good job. You know your stuff. Again, I've been doing this stuff when I was a little boy, because my mother introduced me to sports when I was a little boy. And from there, I got the chance to work with all the networks, from NBC to CBS, ABC Monday Night Football, Fox Sports, ESPN, working with a lot of them, but as a spotter for the play-by-play talent. So I learned the diction and how to do the spotting of it, and so I learned to do that on my own, and I really appreciated that. And then I knew that Big C had been doing some play-by-play over the years and played ball, pro ball, so I learned some things talking to him also over the years. But at the same time, you got to do things on your own, because I remember when I got in with John Madden and Pat Summerall, I was able to go to the press box, and I was about 10 feet away from the best broadcaster in the universe, the great John Madden and the late Pat Summerall. These men were smooth. They were always prepared. They always prepared. And what I learned from them is just make sure you show up. There were times when people wouldn't show up. Hey, man, my car's on the flat, or I got a flat tire, or the dog ate my homework, can't find my microphone. And people make excuses. And they wait until almost kickoff before they tell the producer they can't make it to the game. The producers say, okay, always have backups. That way you don't wait for people. You just go forward. If some people want to see you fail, they'll tell you at the last minute. But don't worry about them. God got your back. You never fail when you count on God and count on yourself. And that's what I remember from doing that San Diego Chargers and San Francisco 49ers broadcast. I got the chance to go to the press box with John Madden and Pat Summerall. I didn't ask. They offered it to me because I knew my stuff. Just know the answer, no matter what color you are. If you know the answer to the test, then no one can stop you from being what you want to be. You got to know that. I'm telling this story because something's about to launch and it's really big, and I wanted to do this show today to let my people know that have supported me over the years. You got to manifest things. And I'm very passionate. I do that for Todd. He was always passionate. Even when he said, good morning, Todd. Good morning. Like, Todd, why are you always yelling? I'm not yelling. He's just passionate. I love that about Todd. I always love the things that he told me over the years. And so from that game with the 49ers and the Chargers, I got a chance to work with other networks. And NBC got the chance to work with them. There's a guy by the name of David Gibson. I remember I was in the broadcast truck. You know, I had met Pam Oliver, who's still doing work with broadcast. I had met Lynn Swan. I had met Frank Gifford. I'd even met Howard Cosell earlier in my foray into the business. and Tom Hammond that did the Olympics, Lewis Johnson that covers the Olympics and NBA basketball. Met a lot of these great guys over the years. Bill McDonald that does work for the Los Angeles Lakers. Bill McDonald used to spot games for him. And he told me so many things that I learned from. And he said, man, you do a good job. You know your stuff. Can you work the next game when I'm in town? So they fly him back to LA and fly him back in town in San Francisco. I worked Cal basketball, Stafford basketball, and then got into the Golden State Warriors, Sacramento Kings. I did all of that stuff, but most of it I was invited to come because I'm ready and I know what I'm doing. And so that's something I always remembered. So when I was thinking about God, I would really love to work the Super Bowl. It was David Gibson. He was producer for, I think it was Dick Enberg, the #1 broadcast host for that show on NBC Sports at the time. And he said, you do a good job, my man. I'm going to put in a word for you, Charlton, to work the Super Bowl. I didn't ask him. All I did was prayed about it. That's a clue, young men. I was like one of 2 black men in that truck. There's about 60 guys in the broadcast truck with NBC Sports. And I want to thank Tim DeKime out of New York, NBC Sports. Tim DeKime has always been very kind to me. Tim DeKime has run a lot of the top broadcast NFL with NBC when he was doing that back in the day when I met him. And he set me up to cover the whole year, out of New York City to San Francisco. So I always want to thank Tim DeKime and Mike Roig and Fran Morrison. And reaching out to them again, I really appreciate that. But when David Gibson said, would you mind working the Super Bowl? I said, I'd love to. He said, let me get back to you during the week. This was on a Sunday. So from there, I remember I got sent the package, and they showed me where all the NFL players and the broadcasters were coming from. I'm not giving out that information. But it had the flight itinerary for Super Bowl 33. It was Denver versus the Green Bay Packers down at San Diego at Qualcomm Stadium. And so I get to see where every media person was flying out to the Super Bowl from all over the country. And I'm telling this story for a reason, because some people want to hear, how do you get in this business? And they think they got to count on people. You don't got to count on people. People quit. Sometimes people don't show up for work. Sometimes people call in sick. People say, hey, I can't make it today. Don't worry about that. You show up. You got to always rise and shine. My mother told me that. Don't worry about people. I've tried to give people opportunities in broadcast, and sometimes people don't appreciate it. And that's okay too. But I remember trying to get the gig with the Super Bowl, and all I did was pray about it. And David Gibson turned around and said, you do a good job. He didn't say you do a bad job. Long story short, they flew me down to the Super Bowl, gave me a driver, and I met a lot of great people that I'd seen only on television, from athletes to broadcasters. We had the B-52. It wasn't the B-52. It was that stealth plane that flew over, and everyone was just on pause. That thing flew over like, you couldn't even hear it, but you could see the trail of the, wasn't even smoke. You could see the heat flames coming off of it, but you couldn't hear anything. And I was just in awe by that, so I really appreciate that. And you say, like, what does that have to do with being Big C Sports? I told you I started today's show because somebody's listening. Like I tell my son, you can do anything you want to be because it's in your blood. Just don't quit. Most people quit. They quit on themselves right before they get the big opportunity. So that's okay. If you quit, quit. It's all right. But don't you quit on yourself. And I'm saying from that Super Bowl, I was only one of 3 Chiron assists from all over the country that they flew in. And I'll never forget that because I prepared a lot of those stats that were on television for the Green Bay Packers and the Denver Broncos. That was Big C Sports starting it back then. That was 1998. The game was played in 99, I believe. But I want to just say, if you prepared, when you're ready, the teacher will come. And sometimes people are going to exit your highway. Let them exit. That means something bigger and better is coming. Always show up and rise and shine. So from there, covered a lot of sports. Football, went back to a couple of Super Bowls I've covered over the years. NBA basketball, All-Star games, World Series games. I was one of the first to work a stats. It was at the Pac Bell-Park at the time when they opened it in San Francisco, the ballpark that Barry Bonds built. And I think the Philadelphia Phillies came out, and I was keeping stats. It was the Philadelphia Phillies and the San Francisco Giants. I did a great job. They asked me to keep coming back. And I got into broadcast. There's a lot of guys in the Bay Area media that I got in that opened doors for me. And I really appreciate that. I'm not going to try to name drop because that's not cool. I didn't get their permission to. But, I will say one was Dennis O'Donnell, does CBS in San Francisco, because I used to spot games for him in the Bay Area, and I did a good job for him. I've always liked Dennis. He did a great job. He's still the leading sports anchor at CBS 5 in San Francisco, California, so I love paying homage to him. Also, the great Joe Fonzie. I remember spotting the games for Bob Fitzgerald, who does the play-by-play for the Golden State Warriors, Bob Fitzgerald. And I remember there was a lot of other guys that I've met in media over the years that I just did some work, ancillary work for them on the side. But after the games were over, I would go and say, you know what, I can do the same thing they're doing. And I started doing it. And I met a guy by the name of Dave Cox, and we started covering college football in the Bay Area. And we won a Bay Area Broadcast Excellence Award against all the Bay Area media, whether it was Gary Radnich, whether it was, I think there was a guy, Tim Roy, that still does a lot of producing over at KNBR Radio. Met a lot of guys, Richard Zinn, that was one of the producers over at that time, Bay TV. But our show won Bay Area Broadcast Excellence Award. And that was Charlton Curry and Dave Cox. And from there on, I just started doing some NFL work. The first time, and I want to tell people this too, I covered my first NFL game, broadcasted the game. It was the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Oakland Raiders at the Coliseum. I think the Raiders won 45-0. Rich Gannon was quarterback for the Oakland Raiders at that time. I'll never forget that. John Gruden was the coach. And of course, the late Al Davis was still around. But from there, I just started doing my work. I sent in tapes, and I realized, as I was told by a lot of sports agents, Ralph Sanders is one of them. Also, met a lot of other good guys over the years. And they said, you have what it takes. You just got to do your own thing. Don't worry about who's going to give you an opportunity. Just go out and start doing games. And I really appreciate that. And from there, the opportunity of Big C Sports opened up. So for you young kids out there that are trying to figure out how am I going to get my foot in the door, you just got to do it. You just got to do it. And when you do it, you'll find yourself being great at it. And no matter what people think about it, you'll be great at it. But you got to be able to do it and not worry about who's going to be on your team. You got to be in your own team. Whether it's a football player and all the sports agents that are out there, you got to know that you can do it on your own. You got to. And I tell people that all the time. Anyone who listens, like Lee Steinberg, he's in my book. I'm writing a book, and I still wrote about it. I'm still writing it. It's called, Race, Big Business, and Sports. It'll be published very soon. But there's a lot of other athletes that I know, some sports agents that I've interviewed over the years. I met just a lot of good people that I've met over the years. I was going to do an NFL Hall of Fame golf tournament up in Napa, California a couple of years ago, but they had the Napa fire, so we weren't able to do that. But I still think, the Marinix that get me set up with that to bring some people in town and interview some of the old-timer Oakland Raiders and the people that were part of that. So going back to what I was talking about, got started doing some high school football, some junior college, and then some college, and then professional sports. And I met at the Super Bowl down in Florida. It was actually Miami, Atlanta versus the Denver Broncos. It was John Elway's last game. We went to a hockey game. I think it was the Florida Panthers. They were playing the Dallas Stars, and someone had just signed a $47 million contract. And I met a guy out of Texas that was in Florida. His name was David Ross. And he said, man, you have a great voice. Would you be willing to cover some sports on the West Coast? Talking about where we're from, sitting in with the media. And I said, sure. And so I started covering the NFL football as a West Coast correspondent, covered all the NFC West and the AFC West. And then from there, they saw I knew what I was doing. So then I started covering the whole country. Our first tagline was the guy who's won 7 Super Bowl championships. His name is, hi, I'm Tom Brady, quarterback for the New England Patriots, and you're listening to America's Sports Talk team, Sports Talk USA. That was Tom Brady. And now he has 7 NFL Super Bowl championships. He was the first person on our show that I was invited to be a part of. That was 20 years ago. Some of the guys are gone, but I'm still here. So over the years, people have asked me to be parts of things. I thank Brendan Anderson, who had me do an NBA preview, NBA playoff preview with a stand-up and on TV for the Bay Area. And that got a lot of shows. I think, a lot of people, Big C over the years, sharing knowledge with him, sharing stories with him. John Wynn that owns his own TV network in Nevada. Also, I won't say everybody's name because I don't have permission to, but a lot of people that have been in this industry. And so from there, started with doing Big C Sports with a couple of people. And it's like God does it this way. Before you grow, some people exit the ship so you can grow. And I remember that because I was telling Big C we could just do our own thing. And the guys that quit, I don't know what they're doing now. When we were doing the work at Salem Media, I'll never forget Lisa, was her first name, sales manager. He said, "You guys are my dream team. For the first time in 44 years, we've reached budget for the whole year because of you guys." He put it in an email. I still have the letter. And at that station, which is a financial network station, they started doing Monday Night Football. That's because of Big C Sports. There was already an ESPN station in town, but they started doing Monday Night Football based on what we were doing. We were saying that sports is a billion-dollar industry, and boys and girls sports is the foundation to that billion-dollar industry. And since then, they started doing the NFL football. And when we left, we started doing sports at a sports club, I think it's Bun Sports Pub and Grub, a former player for the 49ers up in Northern California, did that. And things changed, and so started doing our own thing. But there's always change, but don't you change. Last thing I'll say before I just run down a couple of things that are important about today. I remember covering fights. I've covered fights. I did some live play-by-play of boxing. I also want to thank Uriah Faber, Northern California's finest team alpha male. Met Cody Garbrandt. He won a championship. I held his belt, almost dropped it. But he's a great fighter. Met the Diaz brothers. Also met Josh Emmett. He's part of the UFC circuit. Met a guy, I believe his name is David. He just won the UFC fight. He's out of Northern California. I interviewed him when he was just starting out. He just won a fight last week in Northern California. I can't remember his name, but I know he's out of Northern California. Black guy, did a great job making his way up in the world of UFC. So I thank a lot of guys. Roberson, met him. He's a California Muay Thai champion. But I want to thank Uriah Faber because I had the chance to interview Uriah Faber, and a lot of his boxers that trained at Team Alpha Male in Northern California, and they had a big event at Golden One Center, and I was able to interview him along with a few other TV stations before they had that interview. So I thank him for that opportunity. And then I had the chance to meet some great ring announcers. I met Stitch, the cut man, the greatest cut man in the universe. Met Stitch at an MMA fight in Northern California. And just going from there to rise and shine and keep grinding. But I tried to open the door for a couple of other people in media and had them come and just do some filming and meet some boxers and some fighters and other entertainers that come. It was at Thunder Valley in Northern California. And they didn't show up. They did not show up. And they didn't call me. I think the fight started at 7 and they went to about 10 o'clock. So I like to get there at least 2 hours early to interview the fighters that are ready to interview. Some want to talk after the fight, others before the fight. He texted me about 5 minutes to 7. He said, "Hey, Charleston, I'm sorry, man, but I'm not going to be able to come there and do any interviews because of whatever reason." All I texted him back was thank you. And some of the people that he would have met were 4-time Emmy Award-winning producers that could have opened doors for him like he opened doors for me, but he didn't show up. And that's his choice. I just wished him well. But I kept going on. It's like I'm telling young people that are listening right now, you always rise and shine. You don't worry about who's there with you. God is with you. Because people, sometimes they have their own problems. If they reach out to you, reach out and help them. Reach out, touch somebody's hand. But if not, you can't worry about it. You got to go forward. You got to have a parachute. I love talking to business partners that pray for me and my family to make sure that whatever I need, that I have. But as you get older, some people, they don't have that same thing. So I've always said, if I've ever hurt anybody's feelings over the year, let me know. I'll apologize. We don't have to see things the same way, but we should not be at odds, and that's fine. There's no hurt feelings of anybody. But I started doing the boxing, met some great people, got the chance to do the TV after that. Now we're on television on several platforms from Xfinity, Comcast TV, Apple TV, Roku TV. I think there's Amazon Fire TV, and there's some other platforms that are out there considering doing some advertising with the NFL Network with Big C Sports. Just a lot of things are coming. But I rise and shine every day. I've never missed a show since I started Big C Sports. And that was back in September 12, 2015. I've never missed a day, never missed a promotion, even during some very tough times in my life, never missed a day. Because God is a rewarder of those who diligently seek Him. And I tell that to young kids that are listening. Major League Baseball Power Rankings, number 1, the San Francisco Giants, the city by the bay. They did the smackdown to the Dodgers last night. And then number 2 in the Power Rankings, Major League Baseball Power Rankings, Los Angeles Dodgers. Number 3, the Houston Astros in the Major League Power Rankings for Big C Sports. Number 4, the great Tony La Russa and the Chicago White Sox. Number 4 in the Major League Baseball Power Rankings. Number 5 on the Big C Sports Major League Baseball Power Rankings, the Boston Red Sox. I wonder why their socks are red. You guys can all Google that and see why their socks are red. Number 6, Tampa Bay Rays and Big C's NBA. I see Major League Baseball Power Rankings. Still got some NBA on my mind. It's all fair and level war. Number 7 in Big C's Major League Baseball Power Rankings, the San Diego Padres. Really love watching them swing the bat. Number 8, the Milwaukee Brewers in Big C's Major League Baseball Power Rankings. Them good boys. Now they can probably climb to the top of the mountain. Now that King Giannis Antetokounmpo has won an NBA championship and become an NBA MVP, and no, he's not a freak. Only freaks out there are the people that call him freak when they look in the mirror. But he's not a freak, he's a king. Number 9 in Big C Sports Major League Baseball Power Rankings, the Oakland Athletics. Really love having 2 powerful teams in the Bay Area. Number 10, the Toronto Blue Jays cracked the top 10 of Big C's Major League Baseball Power Rankings. It's all fair in love and war. I just want to wish everybody, no matter what you're doing, I wanted to tell a story about where I am and how I got started. And oftentimes, like Lee Steinberg gave me some great advice over the years, and I'll never forget it, and he knows what it is, but you're going to have to read the book to follow that advice. I love bringing all that stuff that I've learned over the years to everybody. NFL football is some 49 days away. Just 49 days away, I will be down at a couple of training camps for the San Francisco 49ers down in Santa Clara, working with Big C Sports. We'll bring you some live interviews from some professional NFL football players. Really looking forward to that as the program is expanding for Big C Sports. Also news in the NFL universe in the COVID-19 response for unvaccinated players, that they may be the reason that teams will forfeit games because they may be unvaccinated. That's what the NFL is saying. Well, ironically, if the CDC is saying that you don't have to wear a mask, and they're saying that we're safe enough to take off the not opening for business sign that people had to close shop. If you're open for business, why do you got to make sure that everybody's vaccinated if they're saying herd immunity kicks in? I mean, if you're able to let the athletes play football, basketball, baseball, touch each other, tackle each other, then that means you're probably not that afraid of COVID anyway. So why forfeit a game if you have some unvaccinated players? Maybe just take that player and send them to the side. But I don't know. That's just an opinion. If you're going to forfeit a game because you have unvaccinated players, that doesn't make any sense. NBA basketball, when they had players that tested positive, what they do? They didn't forfeit the games. They just put the player in quarantine. I mean, maybe that's more talk to come up, but everybody has their own opinion. I want to just say the Olympic ceremony, they start tomorrow. And I have a relative that's over in Japan covering the Olympics. I wish you the very best. Always rise and shine, Tyler. Sometimes when you start something big, not everybody that starts with you is going to end with you. But don't you stop rising and shining. You know what I'm talking about. You got to always rise and shine. There's also something I'm going to be talking about more as some of the platforms are revealed for Big C Sports in 2021, starting with the football season. You can Google the Black Sports Network. It's growing in the United States, part of a billion-dollar industry, and it's black-owned. Black Sports Network, just like I started Big C Sports. And I want people to just realize there's a lot of money in this business, but you got to be able to go out and do it. And don't worry about who shows up or who doesn't show up. You show up. You rise and shine. There's a reason my mother told me to rise and shine. You got to always rise and shine. If I didn't, then sometimes the show won't go on. In Hollywood, there's something called the show must go on. Don't worry about people that the dog eats their homework or they get a flat tire or they can't show up. Don't worry about it. You just rise and shine because it's your destiny. You got to always do it. In Black history, I want people to think about some things that are important that may not be talked about in mainstream media, but the universities and the clergy may not talk about it either. I always ask young Black kids, you got to Google where all life came from. All life came from the continent of Africa. We just had this thing that I was talking about with Giannis Antetokounmpo being called the Greek freak by a lot of people in media. You don't hear white people being called Greek freaks. You hear white people being called, Mr. or Mrs. Never have they been referred to pejoratively at that and been proud of it. There's a person, my goodness, as the universe would have it be. There's a person that was part of the Olympics and I believe made an anti-Semitic statement. Can't remember the network, but you can Google it. There was an Olympic, oh my goodness, I can't remember the name of the person, but you can, if you Google it, you'll hear about it. There's a person, a broadcaster, that was put on pause because he made some anti-Semitic jokes about Jewish people. I'm sure had he made those jokes about a black man calling him a Greek freak, he would have been okay. But he made anti-Semitic jokes and he got put on pause. As the media calls black men freaks. No one gets put on pause. They get interviews. Google it. It's all fair in love and war. I really appreciate everything that's going on with the world of sports. I wanted to do something different for today and tomorrow because I'm doing some things with the platform that are going to be just phenomenal. And I thank Comcast Sports for that, our Xfinity Comcast TV for that. Also iHeartRadio with that, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Hubhopper, PodTrack. There's so many things and so many apps that we're on that I'm just appreciating at the way that God is saying, let there be light in Genesis 1:3. Always let there be light. Whatever goes on in life, I believe in rising and shining and just bringing attention to things that people want to be. Don't worry about how you're going to do it, just do it. LeBron James, one of the most well-known athletes in the history of the universe. LeBron James becomes the first NBA billionaire. King James, he will not allow media to label him as a freak, but they can call him billionaire. He wants to be a billionaire, so blinking bad. Think about that. He's an inspiration for all people, especially young black boys. And I just think it's important that people rise and shine. Congratulations, LeBron James. But I want to just give people one assignment if I can. It's not for everybody, but it's for those who it's meant for. Black civil rights leaders of the past and present how their works inspired future generations to become great leaders in sports and entertainment. If you Google that, you can realize that not everybody wants to see you shine. Some people want to see you fail. And that's their prerogative. What Bobby Brown say, my prerogative is their prerogative. But you rise and shine. You got to always rise and shine no matter what's going on in life. I love getting ready for the Olympics. I know we're going to have no fans at the Olympics in Japan, but there's still going to be athletes who rise and shine from all over the universe. It's your time to rise and shine. You only got one shot. The great Eminem singing about having one shot to shine. Everybody got to rise and shine. We always like doing our show every Monday through Friday at 5 or 6 p.m. worldwide on Big C Sports Network. And I love doing that. There's so much coming to the Big C Sports Podcast that's really, to my mind, just a dream come true. It's a $1 billion industry. I love being a part of that $1 billion industry. But you got to manifest. You got to manifest every day as you rise and shine. When you manifest, just like the sun shines every day and it sets every day. When you rise and shine, you got a chance to be a part of that. When you get in that car, you put the key fob in and you press the start key and it starts up and that engine hums. You got to rise and shine so that your engine hums every day. Every day you got to hum and rise and shine. No matter what it is, always do that. There's a lot of good things. Can't wait to bring it to you from Big C Sports. So everybody always do that. As I always say, back in the day, there's a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man. And he would always say, you float like a butterfly, you sting like a bee, you rumble, young men rumble. With all you've got to use, how can you lose? And I would say, Big C, what are your thoughts on the sports universe? I'm going to tell everybody this story. Won't take but 30 seconds. Welcome to the show. This is Big C Sports Monday through Friday at 5 to 6 p.m. worldwide. Available to millions on podcast radio. And I talk about myself. I talk about Big C. the goal is to bring real sports talk and entertainment to the sports universe and not have to go out and grab somebody's permission. So there are times when I do my show solo. There are times when I do it with Big C. There are times that I'm going to have some NFL athletes being part of Big C Sports in 2021, and they can have their following to follow Big C Sports. For all you sponsors that are looking to sponsor something real, for a guy that's never missed one day, not one, not two, not three, not four, not 1 day, that means you can count on your money being spent in a wise place, because I don't make excuses and I don't call in sick. My name's Charlton Curry, and you heard it from me on Big C Sports. Remember that when you're paying out sponsorship money, and you get a lot of people on vacation. Even when I'm on vacation, I still do the show. There's a lot of guys on different platforms, they're on vacation, and you don't hear their voice. You hear Big C Sports every single day, Monday through Friday, and may introduce some things on Sunday, because I show up every single day just like the sun, I rise and shine. Back in the day, we always rose and shine, and we'll keep rising and shining. You can rise and shine too every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide when you follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. Big C Sports Podcast, iHeartRadio Podcast, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast. There's so many apps you can follow. Also follow us on TV, Xfinity, Comcast TV, on the iHeartRadio app, Big C Sports. As my mama always says, there's never ever an excuse for racism or domestic violence. If you know any man, woman, or child going through that garbage, pick up the phone and ask for help, because no man, woman, or child should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you, on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.